So many LinkedIn profiles now feel AI generated. They read like a resume and they feel forgettable. So, today let's talk about how you can write the About section of your LinkedIn profile to be personal and credible, one that makes people actually want to connect with you. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. So I love that more and more people are actively using LinkedIn. But remember that your LinkedIn is not your resume and it shouldn't read like a job description. It is a place for you to showcase more of your character along with your credibility. And because so many people use AI to write the content for their LinkedIn profile, it can feel really robotic, and often the content that AI can generate for things like your LinkedIn profile can be full of buzzwords and full of corporate cliches. So, how do you write a profile that is going to help you to actually stand out in the marketplace and make people want to establish a connection with you, to get to know you better, to have you be the person that is showing up on their feed? So, instead of relying on cliches like strategic thinker, passionate, and hard worker, how can you swap this approach for one that is going to have more impact with the people you are trying to connect with? On this channel, I've spoken a lot about how you can elevate your LinkedIn profile. I've spoken about how you can refresh your LinkedIn profile photo, how you can create a more engaging LinkedIn profile banner. I've talked about how you can write a more effective LinkedIn profile headline. I've spoken about the quick 1-minute wins that you can have for your LinkedIn profile. But what I really wanted to discuss today is more detail about that credibility and character that you can add to your profile. How you make both your personality and your value proposition pop on your LinkedIn profile. So I have 6 tips to share with you today, and let's get into my tip number 1, and that is to sharpen your hook. Remember, when you are writing your LinkedIn profile, you need to make sure, like with any good writing, that you aren't burying your lead, because LinkedIn is only going to preview the first few lines of the About section of your LinkedIn profile. So you want to make sure that it is intriguing enough for people to want to read on. Some of the things that you want to make sure that you are including in the hook of your LinkedIn profile is telling people what you do. And this is a good opportunity to make sure that you are ticking a few of the search engine optimization boxes as a part of your LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure that LinkedIn understands the expertise that you bring to the platform. So it understands what your field is, so it can connect you to the right people. But you also want to make sure that you are communicating how it is that you do what you do. And this is where you are integrating into the hook of your LinkedIn profile references to the specific skill sets, the capabilities that are required for you to achieve the things that you do. And then you also want to make sure that you are communicating who you do it for. This is where you are referencing, for example, the industries that you are in or the kinds of stakeholders that you work with, so that a visitor to your LinkedIn profile understands that they have come to the right place, that there is a connection there that makes sense to them. But you don't want to just make sure that you are qualifying your audience or ticking the SEO boxes. You want to make an impact. And that is where the idea of Simon Sinek's start with why is really important in your hook as well. Because with the start with why mindset, it means that it's not just about what you do and how you do it, but why you do it. And another way to think about this is the transformation state that the work that you do helps someone to achieve, that helps an organization or contributes to an industry or can help the person that you want to connect with on the platform. As Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So make sure that you are adding some sort of transformational state or impact orientated element to your hook. So, just to give you an example from my own LinkedIn profile, my profile begins with "Welcome, I'm Dianne, personal brand coach, consultant, and speaker for executives, emerging leaders, and business owners. Use personal branding to differentiate your trusted brand in the marketplace and build industry influence." So, as a part of my hook, for example, you see the capabilities and the skill sets that I bring to my work. You see the kinds of people that I work with. And then you also see an element of that transformational state, whilst also ticking a few SEO boxes that are relevant to me as well. If you do want to learn more specifically about search engine optimization for your LinkedIn profile, then I've done a whole other episode on this topic as well. So make sure that you check out that too. So I know that a lot of people like to talk about hooks when it comes to writing, and I do feel that it just has to be said. But the rest of the points that I want to share, I feel are the things that don't get enough attention. So let's talk about my point number 2, and that is word games. So with your hook out of the way, this gives you a chance to lean into a more conversational tone for your LinkedIn profile. So this is where you can start to add more of that personality. You can start to bring in more character to your profile. A way that you can think about the tone on your LinkedIn profile is to picture having a chat with colleagues in a cafe as opposed to writing the value proposition on your resume. It's a chance to feel more warm and personable. And it's also a chance to create writing that feels a little bit more like music to the ears of the person who is reading it. So, for example, you might use a technique like alliteration, where you're using words together that have a similar sounding start or start with the same letter, for example. You might use a turn of phrase. So you're taking something that people are familiar with and you're giving it your own little personal twist as well. So it creates something that is both familiar, but it also uses an element of pattern interruption as a part of that as well. And you might also try something like wordplay. In my own bio, for example, instead of just saying that I offer my services Australia wide, I instead say, "From Adelaide, South Australia, I deliver online one-to-one personal brand coaching Australia wide. So if you're outside of Adelaide, my digital door is still open to you. Or if you're within Australia, ask me about traveling to you." So, as a part of that, I've ticked a couple of SEO boxes by integrating my location and also my field of expertise. But I've also used an element of alliteration in that as well with the phrase digital door, and used a little bit of a turn of phrase by saying my digital door is always open to you. So it's just a slight play on a phrase that people are already familiar with. And another way that you might think about this is that while some things might be a cliche, like for example, attention to detail, you could find a way to say it in a slightly more compelling and interesting way. You might say, for example, "with an eye for the often overlooked." So you're implementing a little bit of that turn of phrase, and you're also using an element of alliteration in there as well. So it is just a little bit more appealing to the person that is reading it. And if you do want to learn more about the cliches or the words and the phrases that could be hurting your LinkedIn profile, then check out my earlier episode where I talked about the 9 top cliches that I feel are often really popular on LinkedIn. But for now, let's get into my point number 3, and that is to create contrast. A few little simple formatting tweaks can help to create contrast in your LinkedIn profile. So for example, you might break up more of the text, you might use headings, you might use symbols or emojis to help to create that contrast and create more of a visual hierarchy throughout your LinkedIn profile, or encourage the reader's eyes to continue to move through your profile. You might also use capitals, you might integrate paragraph headlines into your LinkedIn bio, which is what I do on my profile. I use a combination of capitals and headlines to create more of this sectioned feel to my LinkedIn profile. creating contrast is often a really key focus when it comes to visual design because it makes more important information pop on the page. It is a really useful technique in design, but it is also a really key technique when it comes to writing as well. For the same reasons, it makes those key elements pop on the page. When you see the opposite of something, then why something has more value becomes clearer. So keep this in mind when you are writing your own LinkedIn profile. How are you writing your profile in a way that is establishing the differentiation that you have to offer in a marketplace? So, how are you positioning yourself as the unicorn in the marketplace that a recruiter or a potential contact or partner has been looking for? So, for example, in my own LinkedIn profile, I make an effort to differentiate the expertise that I bring to personal branding from people who have a very social media centric only background and the expertise that they bring to personal branding. So, in my own profile, I say, I'm not your typical social or media maverick talking personal branding. With 15 years in marketing, branding, and business, I've led teams, brands, and personal brands in entertainment, sport, retail, and education. So, in just a few of those sentences, you can see that I have added an element of differentiation from other people that might be in this field. I have added specific references to my background and my capability. I've added elements of alliteration. I've added elements of SEO and my industry experience. But a really important element of that as well is that I am highlighting my credibility. And this leads me to my point number 4, and that is to create guide energy. Now, a book that I love to talk about on this channel is Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. I've shared more about his framework in my earlier episodes on storytelling, but a key element that I wanted to highlight today is that Donald Miller really reminds us that the hero in your story is not you, it is your audience. And you actually have a different role to play that is also really important. That is that you are the guide in the story. And the guide has two really important elements. You have authority and you have empathy. So make sure that when you are writing your LinkedIn About section, that you are communicating both your authority and your empathy. So you're communicating the evidence that gives you credibility for your work, your career, your field of expertise, but you're also communicating that you understand your audience, you understand their pain points. You're communicating on a personal level as opposed to purely just a factual or an authority driven approach. So you're telling your audience both why they should listen to you and why you understand them. So while in my own LinkedIn profile, in some of those earlier examples, I've established more of my credibility in particular areas, there is a section of my profile that is a little bit more personal. And I later go on to say something that I know some people might relate to. And that is, with the passing of my greatest leaders, my grandma and dad, came a life-changing lesson in leadership: legacy, making the most of yourself to help pave the way for others. I began personal brand coaching to help empower people to make business personal and create legacies to be proud of. So, in your own LinkedIn profile, you might also communicate your mentor story. You might communicate more of your origin story behind your career to begin with, how you got into what you were doing in the first place. Or you might communicate more of the catalyst behind the career change that you have had. You could also personalize your LinkedIn profile by communicating about a career highlight that you have had. My point number 5 is to create a memorable moment. So while I do make a little bit more of a meaningful point in the section that I have just shared, before I do that, I include a few sentences that have a big impact on communicating more of my value and my character. So to create a little bit of a more memorable moment in my profile, something that doesn't feel so generic, I say, Between all things personal brand coaching, consulting, and speaking, plus my blog, YouTube, and podcast, I'm sipping green tea, devouring my business book of the week, while piano reminds me that big visions need attention to detail. So, in just a few sentences, I'm contrasting the traditional, sort of classic corporate marketing pedigree that I have had with more of my future focused marketing outlook. I'm showing that I understand where the industry is going. I'm subtly referencing my content, and I'm also sharing a little bit about my favorite things and my hobbies as a part of that as well. So remember that to create a LinkedIn profile that is memorable, it doesn't need to be dripping in this overemphasized creativity. It can just have these little moments of personality and character that make your profile more memorable. And my point number 6 is something that a lot of people can forget, and that is to have a call to action. This is something that Donald Miller, in building a story brand through his story brand framework, is really great at reminding us to do. You not only have to position yourself as a guide with empathy and authority, but you need to remember to position yourself as a guide with a plan that calls an audience to action. You might feel that you have communicated the value that you have to offer to a relationship and that people will just know what to do from there. But remember that people sometimes just need to be told what to do. You need to tell them that you are open to connecting. You can invite them to connect with you on your profile. You can encourage them to DM you. You can ask them to email you. This is a really great way to let people know that you are welcoming that relationship. This is a chance for you to welcome a lot of the people that are often lurking on LinkedIn, who might be interested in connecting with you but aren't actually sure if it is suitable to do so. You're encouraging them out of those shadows and into your LinkedIn world, into your digital world. This is almost the digital equivalent of handing someone your business card and asking them to call you. Thanks so much. For more on all things personal branding, subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.